You might think I'm crazy, but I want you to abstain from all sexual encounters, married or single, for the next 30 days. This means no sex, no masturbation, no touch leading to arousal, but also includes anything sexual in nature that's connected to your addiction, like porn use. In essence, what I'm asking you to do is to abstain from any sexual actions at all for the next 30 days. Why? Well, let me give you two reasons. First, I want you to starve your addiction so you can learn to feast on God. And secondly, you need to renew your relationship with sex so that you can begin to see it as a gift and not a God. So today, I want to help you understand my heart for this challenge and then offer you 3 things that I think will help make this 30 days of no sex extremely rewarding for you. Let's chat. Hello again, friend, and welcome back to Sex Addicted Christian. I'm your guide, Jimmy Trent, and it's a pleasure to be with you today. We are here to crush the shame, cultivate community, uncover the unseen, and take action. I'm so glad that we're together today. I'm really excited about this challenge that I want to put forth to you guys for no sex for 30 days. I think this challenge, if you are willing to accept it, I think will pay massive dividends for your efforts to fight for your freedom from sex addiction, porn, lust, or whatever sexual behaviors continue to take hold of your life in a way that is frustrating, difficult, and consequential. But before we move into that, I want to make sure that if you haven't yet downloaded the 4 pillars of the porn-free life, it is a checklist guide. It's about 30 days long, so it pairs nicely with this challenge. And if you are ready to take your porn addiction and the recovery and finding freedom seriously, go to the website sexaddictedchristian.com and download it and start working on it. You could also click in the notes below in the description and follow the link there. I'll send it right to you, and you can get started on your journey to freedom from this addiction. So back to our conversation, 30 days of no sex, a challenge to abstain from sex for the next 30 days. This idea first came to me 2 Easters ago when we were celebrating Lent, and people were giving up various things in preparation for Easter celebration. Christians observe Lent in an attempt to break some of the routines and the dependencies that they have in preparation for Christ's death, burial, and resurrection yearly celebration at Easter. This time brings the Christian's heart closer to God in reflection and prayer and dependence by abstaining from something in their life that they maybe depend on too much or have become comfortable with. So 2 Easters ago, I issued a challenge to those in my friend groups that maybe they should consider giving up porn for Lent. So I understand it's not Easter, it's August 2020, but yet we still have the opportunity, and I still think the principles are in place. We don't need Lent to get us to this place, but if you're struggling with a sexual addiction and your relationship with sex in any kind has become dependent, ritualistic, routine, and it's something you're stuck in, I think a particular fasting or a separation from sexual behaviors may be the thing that acts as the catalyst to really push you forward in your journey to freedom. Your addiction to porn is a lot about your appetites. You have trained your palate, so to speak, to crave and subsequently only be satisfied with lust or porn. It's not unlike my morning routine in relationship with coffee. I'm not up 5, 6, 7 minutes every morning before I'm in front of the Keurig, cup of coffee, and sitting on the back porch. It's become second nature. It's a ritual in my life. The reality is I've trained my body to quote unquote need caffeine in the mornings, or without it, my body kind of goes into a shock. I become tired, slow, and just can't really get started with my day. Our appetite with food is very similar. Why does someone choose to eat McDonald's. It's certainly not because it's good for you. However, we've trained ourselves to crave the flavors that come, whether it's the high sodium or some secret ingredient they're not telling us about. It's not, unless you ask my kids, that it tastes very good. It's just that we've become accustomed to eating it, and the flavors that come in a double cheeseburger from McDonald's seems to be far more exciting than a handful of baby carrots. My wife and I have done some cleansing diets where we abstain from a lot of these foods that aren't good for us, and in doing so, I was quite surprised at the flavors that came out in some of these what I would have considered boring vegetables or fruits, but those flavors became more robust and more pure as I separated myself from lots of sugars or high sodium foods. Here's my point today and the heart behind why I want you to consider this 30-day challenge. Your appetite for God has been severely dulled because of your continual ingesting of pornography. I don't think you would know a good meal when it comes to your relationship with God if it slapped you right in the face. Pornography, masturbation, lust, your sexual addiction is your McDonald's. It's fast and it's full of flavor, but the truth is, it's killing you. Many have told me over the years that God just isn't satisfying enough for them to walk away from their sexual addiction. My response often is, of course, He isn't. You haven't given Him a chance to satisfy your soul. This is why I want you to consider 30 days of no sex. I want you to starve yourself of the junk food so that you can develop an appetite for what's truly satisfying. Psalm 34:8 is our mantra for this month. Oh, taste and see that the Lord is good. So, are you with me? 30 days, no sex. Let's retrain the appetite of our soul for what's deeply satisfying this month. So, if you're in with me, I want to offer you 3 things that you should consider as you take this challenge to make this 30 days the most meaningful time that you can, and it prayerfully, hopefully, and by God's grace will launch you into a life of recovery and freedom from your sexual addiction. Okay, so 3 things I want you to consider adding to this 30 days of no sex. Number 1 is prayer and fasting. For those of you listening that are married, you may be really questioning this suggestion that I'm suggesting for you to not have sex. But I want you to listen carefully to Paul's words to the Corinthians in 1 Corinthians chapter 7. Read along with me here. Now concerning the matters about which you wrote, it is good for a man not to have sexual relations with a woman, but because of the temptation to sexual immorality, each man should have his own wife and each woman her own husband. The husband should give to his wife her conjugal rights, and likewise the wife to her husband. For the wife does not have authority over her own body, but the husband does. Likewise, the husband does not have authority over his own body, but the wife does. Do not deprive one another, here we go, except perhaps by agreement for a limited time, that you may devote yourselves to prayer, but then come together again, so that Satan may not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. So, married or single, what we're addressing here is that the reality is sex has become a god for us and no longer a gift in the way that God intended it. So for the singles, I have a pretty strong view on whether or not you should be having sex or expressing yourself sexually in particular ways. But for the marrieds, sex is a part of your life, or at least it should be. And so it's a little bit different relationship here in terms of the idea of no sex for 30 days. But for the sex addict in both scenarios, married or single, starving yourself of sex for 30 days could really be a beneficial direction for you to go. I want for you to be able to reorient yourself around sex and who God is and what His design is for it. So the aim in all of this is that you might allow yourself to develop an appetite in your relationship with God. To best position yourself to accomplish that during this time, you need to be planned and thoughtful about spending intentional time with Him. So while you're abstaining from sex over the next 30 days, you might also consider some type of fast to go alongside that, where you get rid of some kind of time waster in your life or something that you've become too dependent on, in addition to sex, of course. But you might take away TV in the evenings, or you might fast from social media for the month. There's a number of different things that you could consider doing so that you create space and opportunity to spend more time with God while you're reorienting your views and experience of sex. To add depth and detail to this moment, I do want you to also be reading the Bible daily if you can, even if just for a few minutes, so that you're positioning yourself to hear from God. So number 1, prayer and fasting. Number 2, I want you to spend this 30 days getting educated about your addiction. In those early days and weeks and even months, when I was beginning my recovery journey to freedom, I spent a good amount of time reading books on sex addiction. Understanding the various aspects of how and why lust had taken over my life proved to be instrumental in me entering into my new life of freedom. So as a quick sub-point here, I want to give you 3 ways that you might get educated about your addiction. Number 1, simply reading books. There are a lot of books written on the subject that are very helpful and some which are just excellent. So in the description below, I'll link up a few of my favorites for you to look at and consider reading during this month. Number 2, I think you should consider beginning a counseling relationship with someone who understands sexual addiction from a Christian perspective. This too was a part of my own story, and my relationship with my counselor helped in the specifics around my addiction. There's lots of general things that are true that are super helpful, but they don't all apply the same way. And so finding someone that can walk you through your own story and journey and help you see the intricacies of the details will prove to be very helpful in your education and subsequently, I think, your freedom. And then thirdly, under the education here, I want you to find some other sex addicts to talk to about their journey. Although your stories will be different in particular, there are lots of commonalities and themes that will prove to help you understanding your own relationship with sex and how to find your own freedom. Okay, number 1, pray and fast. Number 2, get educated about your addiction. Number 3, and our final point today is this. I want you to commit to a recovery plan. I'm pretty sure you've heard Benjamin Franklin's famous quote, "If you fail to plan, you're planning to fail." This is great wisdom that you and I need to consider in this moment. Let me share another quote from the most wise man that has ever lived, Solomon, from the book of Proverbs. Proverbs 15:22 says this, "Without counsel, plans fail, but with many advisors, they succeed." You have to take time in planning your success if you want to find freedom. However, though, I do want to share one more quote with you so that you don't get bogged down with planning and details before you decide to take action. I don't know if you've ever heard of General George Patton, but he led the U.S. as a general in World War II, and he's got a lot of tweetable quotes. But there's one that is my particular favorite and I think has a certain significance for our conversation today. Listen to General Patton's words. "A good plan violently executed now is better than a perfect plan executed next week." Consider the context of General Patton's quote here. He was at war. Time wasted would come at the cost of soldiers' lives. So for General Patton and the U.S. troops, it was much wiser for them to go hard with a good plan today than to wait a week while the enemy takes ground and potentially lives waiting on the perfect plan. For General Patton and for you and me, today is the day to start executing against a plan and fighting the war for our freedom. So let me ask you a question. Are you waiting on the perfect plan before you decide to enter the war for your freedom? A good enough plan executed with conviction and violent action against your addiction is what you need now. So let me give you a couple ideas on how you might put together a plan, some things you might be able to use in order to start your battle plan of action today. One thing you might be interested in is what Covenant Eyes is doing over in their space. They are currently doing a 40-day porn-free challenge. They've put together some resources and even built an app that might serve you in this month of 30 days of no sex. Again, I'll post a link below so that you can click over there and get all the information you need about it and see if that's something that might serve you in your effort to commit to a recovery plan. And while we're talking about Covenant Eyes, you might also be interested in one of the resources they have, their Internet Safety Program. I'll post a link below for that as well if you want to look into that program as a way to add to your recovery plan. And if you haven't yet downloaded and started working through the 4 pillars of the porn-free life, I want to give that to you as a free gift. You can click below here on YouTube or in Facebook, or go to sexaddictedchristian.com and download that and start working through the 4 pillars of the porn-free life. It's crushing the shame of our porn. It's learning to cultivate community, which is such a hard thing for sex addicts to do. And then thirdly, it is uncovering the unseen. It's what we learn as we peel back the layers of our addiction and see the things that are kind of feeding our addiction. The lies that we believe or the experiences that we've had that feed into our addiction. And lastly, taking action. It will help you establish a battle plan. So it'll be a more robust opportunity for you there to learn how to build into your recovery plan specific action steps so that you can move towards your freedom. So, 30 days, no sex. I want you to starve yourself of the unhealthy relationship you have with sex so that you can find yourself deeply satisfied in God and be reoriented around His design for sex as a gift to you, and you can begin to stop seeing it as a God. This will be a massive pivot point in your attempts and desire to find freedom from sexual addiction. Be sure to add prayer and fasting into this time. Spend time getting educated around your addiction and make a very clear commitment to recovery work during this 30 days. Brother and sister, I'm praying for you. I'm so glad that you have chosen to join me and to let me serve you in this way. If there's anything I can do for you, you can always email me, jimmy@sexaddictedchristian.com. You can leave a comment below. You can reach me on any of the social media platforms. I'm here to serve you. I'm here to love you. I'm here to help you. I'm here to fight with you in this war against sexual addiction. I want you to win. I know you can win. God is with you. Go in His grace and in His peace. And until next week, be blessed. I love you. See you next week.